Okay, here is a little quiz for you. What worker says chicken or beef? Now, in one of my classes last week, we had a little game. You had to describe a worker or describe a person using, let me move my camera a bit, using a hint. Now, for example, if you wanted to say baker, you couldn't say baker, of course. You couldn't say bakery. You couldn't say bake, or any derivative of that word. So people would say, this is a person who makes bread. This is a person who makes cookies. This is a person who sells muffins, things like that. Now, some students were a little bit, I'm not going to say clever. I'll just say a little bit different from what you'd expect from a language student. So they might say something like, this is a person who washes their hands a lot and wakes up very early in the morning. Now that, might drive some people toward baker. That's a perfectly valid hint. So when the person in question was a flight attendant, and the student said, this is a person who says chicken or beef, I was very impressed, because that's not what I would expect a student to say. And the other student, that student's partner, understood the main words of the hint, but couldn't really connect a job to it. So that student just threw an idea out there and said, beef staff. Now, beef staff is not a job, but it just tells me that the student is doing their best and trying to figure out a job connected with those keywords. So I thought both of them were impressive. And of course, beef staff, they both knew it was silly and they both laughed. And I said, where does the person work? Who does the person talk to? So then the second version was, this is a person who says chicken or beef to passengers on an airplane. And boom, the student said flight attendant. Actually, the student said cabin attendant, which is fine too. But the whole point is, you have to use what you got. You have to look at the tools available and try to put something together. You can't just freeze and wonder about what you don't have, or regret not having something that might be useful. You've got things at hand, and you have to use them, and you have to try to accomplish your task. So I remember a long time ago, I was teaching a junior high school girl. She was in the first grade of junior high school, so that'd be grade 7 in Canada. So she was 13, and she had a one-on-one lesson with me. So it was the same type of lesson, describing people. She had a lot of job cards, and she had to try to guess what the jobs were. There were no hints on the cards. There were only pictures. So she said things like bread chef, and I said, I understand. And I held up my corresponding card, and it matched. She said housemaker. So I held up my card, and it matched her card. She said, which really surprised me, hair coordinator. Hair coordinator. Why did she know the word coordinator? But I held up the corresponding card, and then I told her, bread chef is fine. I understand what you mean. It's better if you say baker. Baker is the name of this person's occupation. Housemaker. I get it. I know what you mean. I understand what you're trying to communicate. Carpenter would be a better choice. And hair coordinator, you could say barber. These days people, usually go to a hairdresser or a hairstylist. But if you said hair coordinator, I would know what you meant. And that is the main point when I'm teaching students. Don't think of a Japanese word and then try to translate it, or try to find a matching English word and then freeze and panic because you can't find the English word, or you don't know the English word. And sometimes there are no English words for the Japanese word you're thinking of. Look at your English and see what you can make with it. See if you can communicate. If I forget an actor's name and I say, oh, I'm blanking on his name, you know, the guy in Indiana Jones, and he played Han Solo in Star Wars. And then the other person says, oh, I know who you mean. And I forget his name too. But we both communicated. We both know exactly who we're talking about, and we've both been able to identify that particular thing without its name. So you have to be able to describe things. You can't just translate. Especially when you're dealing with a new language, because you're going to encounter people who don't speak your native language. You're going to encounter people who speak the language you're studying, and they're going to ask you questions about your culture. They're going to ask you what things are. They're going to ask you why you do certain things, and you're going to have to explain. You're not going to have rich enough vocabulary for a while to just come up with the best word. You're going to have to use what you've got and try to make it work and try to get your point across. And the same thing happens all the time. You have to change how you speak for your audience, essentially. There are some YouTube videos where an expert explains things at different levels, like to a 5-year-old, to a 6th grader, to a junior high school student, a high school student, a university student, and a master's student in that field. Something like that. And they explain things at different levels of comprehension, different levels of language ability. And it's great. You know, you have to be able to scale up or down depending on who you're talking with. You have to be more technical or less technical, or more formal or more casual. You know, a doctor might say the patient is suffering from a subdermal hematoma in the left parietal region of the cranium, to another doctor or to a nurse. But to the patient or the patient's family, they might say, you're bleeding, you know, under the skin here. Subdermal hematoma, left parietal. There's that temporal, I guess, parietals. Yeah, anyway. You get my point. You have to be able to change your language and tailor it to who you're speaking with. You can't expect the listener to always know what you mean. You know, the onus is on the speaker to deliver. And if the listener doesn't understand, the listener has to indicate it so that the speaker can make adjustments. I have heard conversation compared with playing tennis, and I disagree. I've used that analogy in the past, but I disagree. Tennis is competitive. When I hit the ball, I don't want you to return it. I don't want you to touch it. I want to hit it in a way that you can't deal with. Conversation is not like that. Conversation is collaborative. Conversation is cooperative. Conversation is like playing frisbee. When I throw the frisbee, I want my partner to catch it. And I want them to throw it back in a way that I can catch. And that's what makes it fun. We're working together, and we're cooperating, and we're collaborating. And, you know, successfully throwing the frisbee so that my partner can just get it so easily is very satisfying. And watching the frisbee float towards me, and then I move enough that I can get it, you know, it's also satisfying to receive the frisbee and to know that I've helped my partner succeed. Conversation is like playing frisbee. You have to help each other out and work toward the same goal. So that was just something interesting that happened at work a few days ago. I tend not to think about work when I'm not at work, and I tend not to worry about home problems when I'm not at home, because I like to compartmentalize things. You know, when I see a student, I open up the box, boom, there's all of the student's information, their family status, their job, their age, their hobbies, their interests. But, you know, I can put that away when I meet another student, and I try to keep things clear in my mind. When I have fixed classes on my schedule, you know, I'll pop open a Wednesday night, and I know that I'm going to teach that student. So Wednesday, boom, Wednesday includes this event. It's part of the Wednesday compartment. So when I visit Canada, after maybe a few hours, my brain flips into a whole different mindset because I'm in Canada, I'm not in Japan. And especially when I go to my hometown or when I spend time in Regina, but especially in Kipling, because when I'm in Kipling, I'm just in Kipling mode. It's, I've got my own routine that I can fall back into. Then I mentioned this in the last video when I came back to Japan after my last trip to Canada. As soon as I land in Japan and get on the train and start heading back to Yokohama, boom, Canada feels like it was years ago. I just flip back into Japan mode. And this coming trip, the last time I went to Canada was in June 2019. That's about 4 years ago. And I've got time off and flights reserved to go to Canada in June 2023. So it's 4 years since my last trip. And that's a long time. I usually go every 2 years, and I was planning to go every year after 2019, but the pandemic screwed a lot of things up regarding that. And this time, I'm going to be bookending my Saskatchewan visit with some time in Calgary. I haven't been in Calgary for a long time. Well, I was at the airport in 2019. I flew from Narita to Calgary before getting my connecting flight. That was more convenient. This time, I'll be flying to and from Calgary, and then I'll be arranging I'll be making other travel plans for the Saskatchewan visit, which I haven't totally nailed down yet. I should talk to Tanis about that and see if she's planning to visit Saskatchewan or not. We can coordinate our flights if that's the case. But I don't have a routine for Calgary. I have no independence in Calgary. I can't go anywhere in Calgary. I can't wander around in Calgary because I won't be able to get back to Leanne and Mike's house. I don't have confidence in that. And not having a smartphone, I don't have a map that I can just, pinpoint my location and follow where I want to go. But that'll all get sorted out. But I do know the layout of the house. I usually slept in the basement. This time, I don't think any of the kids will be home, so there should be other places to sleep. But I know the backyard. I know they're not that far from that nature area. Is it called Fish Creek? And there's a lot of good walking around there, but if I walk there, I'll probably not be able to get back to the house. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. So before nailing down my flights, I was fretting and tossing and turning and letting that stick in my brain, because when I have something that's up in the air like that, I do tend to overthink things. But once I booked my flights, all of that dissipated, and now I'm just calm, waiting for the trip. It's been a long time. So I'm interested to see what is in my Calgary compartment when I open that up at the beginning of June when I wind up. I think I'll know mentally the route from the airport to Leanne and Mike's house. I know their kind of cul-de-sac that they live on, but let's see. In 2019, Fiona was 18, just out of high school, and the last time I'd seen her was when she was 4, which would mean my last visit to Calgary was in 2025, which is 18 years ago. 18 years ago. That's a whole lifetime for a high schooler. Almost 2 decades since my last visit to Calgary. So on that note, I've just rambled a bit. bit of teaching philosophy, a funny anecdote from work, my compartmentalization, not my speaking skills, but my compartmentalization skills were brought up, and my anticipation and excitement about visiting Calgary. So I think that is a good time to let this video end, and I'll probably make another video and post it tonight because I just had Sunday and Monday off. Tomorrow I work, then 3 days off, then Saturday work, and then 2 more days off. This is the Golden Week period, although I'm only getting the calendar holidays off, not the full week. So I'll work tomorrow, and then I'll have 3 days off straight. So I'd like to have one video up for each day of this period. Now I missed yesterday because I was being lazy, so if I double up videos today, I can still have the same number even though they weren't posted daily. So we'll see if I can pull this off, if I can do a video a day numerically for this period of time. But anyway, I will end this video now. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one, hopefully sometime in the next few hours.